I hate to define, particularly when I'm working on a character, because I find this embalms him, and he becomes an immortal rather than a living thing. I came to it by a great deal of research and study, but without any conscious... I mean, I'm taken to task a lot about this, that I should synthesize, but I won't, and I can't. I'll give an example of how I came to it. I remember sitting in a black tent in a place called El Jaffa, and we were talking about Lawrence to a lot of Arabs. And someone said, "Oh, Abdi would know better," and they shouted for this man. And in clanked a huge Sudanese gentleman of about 80. And he was a slave, a now freed slave, whom Aoud Abu Tai, who was one of Lawrence's chief warriors, gave to Lawrence to look after him. And someone said, "What did Lawrence look like?" He pointed at me and said, "Him." Well, needless to say, I grabbed him and we talked and talked and talked. He worked on the picture. He made the coffee, in fact. And one day I was playing a scene, and he said, I was sort of talking to someone and being rather remote and looking all over the place, and he said, "A batal, a hero, doesn't look here or there or up or down. He gives someone the plane of his face." I remember two things I'd read. One, Graves told me that Lawrence apparently never looked at anybody. He made a sort of inventory of everyone's clothes. But Kennington, the sculptor who sculpted him a lot and did all the illustrations for Seven Pillars, said this remarkable thing which I'd never understood before, which was that Lawrence reminded him of a middleweight boxer. And at that moment, something very important clicked. And I knew exactly what Abdi meant by the plane of his face, which was this. And the eyes didn't travel over the clothes, but they were aware of the hands and aware of everything that was going on. And it was at once withdrawn, as a boxer must be, and at the same time very penetrating. And this one physical thing really clicked, and it made a whole difference to the way I played him. Now, this is the way I work. I can't work with this. It's sort of exact science to me.
Yes. What about his height, Peter? He was a very short man, and you're a very tall man. Do you make any effort as an actor to think like a small man?
No. I've always said when anyone asks me about Lawrence's inches, I always say it's a question for his tailor, not his interpreter, and that's probably a bit flip. But there's nothing I can do. I don't think it's really all that important anyway. And I'm certainly sure he never thought as a small man.
Yeah.
And I happen to be 8'5", as you clearly implied. Yes. And I can't chop off my legs and roam around on bloody stumps, so I really have had to disregard.
These experiences that you had from people who knew him and the extraordinary things you've seen, have they in themselves deepened your knowledge of Lawrence?
Oh, yes. The desert, I think, primarily. I remember before I went to the desert, someone told me that, the desert is where God was born. Literally one is so alone there. And this man told me that the desert, it's so implacable and so indefatigable. There's nothing that a man can do. And that this gives one a kind of peace. And I had thoughts of this very lonely, tormented gentleman, super cerebral old thing that he was, arriving in the desert and finding his peace. Well, I got there, and I found, for my money anyway, that indeed what happens is it is, as I say, so vast and unremittingly hard that you can't win, and you know you can't win, and then you have a go. And this implies a great deal of strange things, maybe masochistic, which I think he felt.
What about this fetish with cleanliness? You're not all that fussy yourself, so what do you think of this?
Cleanliness is next to godliness, I think. A nice little rule he learned from his very, very strict mum. And also, a psychiatrist told me, and it's evidenced in Shakespeare quite a lot, the Scottish play, for instance. Guilt. The hands never come clean and all that. And he loved the desert. He used to say it was clean. It was clean.
What were some of the things that you heard and read that were important to you about deciding you which way you were going to go?
Oh, there's so many, many things. I remember speaking to a sheikh in Amman. It's the first Arab I met who knew him. And I'd given up asking questions like, what was it like how was it? I used to try sort of tricky things. And I said to him, did he ever tell jokes? At which point he went into a great stream of Arabic, with tears trickling down his face, laughing like a drain. Now, I hadn't the faintest idea what he said, but clearly Lawrence had been very, 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 very funny at one point. And I kept on finding more and more evidence of this. He was a great humorist. And one of them told me about the time that he questioned him for hours about the camel grazing in Piccadilly. And Lawrence gave very solemn replies to all this, whether Oxfordshire was a desert country. And then again, on another level, his descriptions of some of the things in Seven Pillars he did, like the killing of a man, the execution of a man. He had to execute him to keep two tribes from warring with each other, and would split up a whole thing and ruin the whole venture. So he chose, because he had no tribe, that wouldn't offend anybody, to shoot the man. He describes it very coldly in Seven Pillars. Now, I met a man who was with him when he did it, and said that indeed he did do it very coldly and very methodically, and it was rather terrible because the man was down a well and he kept on missing him. And then he went out for a drive in the desert afterwards, he went for a walk, and this man, very worried about him, went to look for him and found him behind a rock, crouched like a 2-year-old baby in the most terrible state of emotion. Now that could colour my killing of this man in the film.
Of course.
I could imply what would happen afterwards, without stating it.